Yes, Hardik. Can someone let me know if they can hear me? Hardik, can you type if you can hear me? Jean. Jean, glad you could make it. Andrew. Andrew made it. Oh, thanks, Hardik. So yeah, guys, we're just gonna wait. Officially, we start in 4 minutes, but just so that we can get everyone on board, let's get everyone. Hi, Ellie. Nice to have you here. Ellie's a long-time follower. Yes. So let me know you've joined if you're here. We hopefully have got a very exciting discussion planned for today. I'll go through the proper introductions when we actually start, but 3 minutes until I start my introduction. Sharia, nice to have you here, man. I see Angela Brady has joined as well. She's one of our guest speakers. Very excited to have Angela on. Angela, I think you emailed me about someone from another agency wanting to talk. If they would like to talk on here, could you tell them to just join the discussion, and then once you and I have our conversation, we can organize whether we bring them on or how we bring them on. So just get them to join the Instagram discussion, the Instagram live. Also, one thing to note is a lot of people couldn't make it today, so we will be recording this, finding a way to record this to upload to YouTube, similar to how we did with the last event. But the last event was very successful, so I have big hopes for this one as well. But yeah, more people joining now. We'll just wait another 2-3 minutes. Guys, let me know you're here. Send a comment. A lot of new people here as well today, so I'm excited to see a lot of new people joining. The thing is, I can see all of you joining. I just don't wanna shout you out and embarrass you unless you want me to. Just 1 minute and then we'll start the introduction. In the meantime, hope everyone's been alright with the lockdown. There's going to be a lot we talk about today to do with how to cope. So it's going to be a really fun event today, I think. Yeah, and we're going to be doing a lot of thinking out loud. So see how it goes. Cool. Okay, so 2 o'clock. Let's start. Okay. Thanks everyone for joining. Let me first start off by saying sorry. Sorry for the short notice, because I know it's only been like 2 days since I announced this. I think with the last event we did a lot longer. We had a lot longer before I actually announced the event. So thank you all for joining. Thank you all for taking the time on your weekend to sit down and to talk about what I think and what I've talked about with my peers to be an incredibly important topic. The most important thing right now, you know, we are architectural practitioners, and it is a pandemic, apparently. So what we want to do is try to basically, today's aim is is to start a conversation on a lot of the fears and anxieties we as architectural practitioners have right now. And I think there's a lot of confusion. So one thing to keep in mind is that we are not experts in COVID policy, in pandemics. We're not healthcare professionals either. So if you've come here to get a sort of kind of a political understanding of things, this is not really going to be the place. We are here, and I've got some incredible guests here who will be joining us with me today to talk about how our field is affected and how our field is going to adapt to what's happening right now. I think a lot of questions want to be asked, but no one knows where to ask them. No one knows when to ask them. And I think I wanted to open up the opportunity to ask these questions today, right now, so that we are better prepared for what happens later. So the three guests I have today, they are incredibly knowledgeable people in their field. They all have a deeply ingrained connection with architecture, yet do very different things. So what I want to kind of that was something that was really important to me, that we have people with different opinions and different views and perspectives. So our first guest who will be speaking will be Rion Willard. Now Rion is he's connected to what actually brought me to podcasting in the first place. He's inspired me in many ways, even before we even actually met on my podcast. So Rion is the founder of Business of Architecture. He also runs his own practice. The Business of Architecture podcast is incredible. It is the place to go if you want to understand how architecture works as a business, if you want to understand how to start your own practice, if you want to understand where to start when it comes to starting your own firm. It's an incredible initiative that he co-founded with Enoch Sears, who runs the Business of Architecture, especially in America. So what an amazing opportunity to get someone like that in front of us here today to ask him questions. He'll give you another introduction when he comes on, but our second guest will be the highly acclaimed Arthur Mamou-mani, also a professor at my university at Westminster. He's someone I have deep respect for. Again, one of my podcast guests, an episode that will be released later. Actually, all of these people who are coming on today, I've had podcast episodes with them, but they'll be out later, so those are ones to look out for as well on the Design Talks podcast. But Arthur Mamou-mani, I mean, where do I start? He's an acclaimed architect. He's worked on major projects, including the Burning Man Pavilion, it was the Galaxia Pavilion for Burning Man. He runs his own practice. He's doing huge things in material research in architecture for bioplastics and 3D printing, and is an incredibly motivational person as well in terms of understanding how the entrepreneurial mind works as well. You know, his family and his father are incredibly inspiring people as well. And finally, we have Angela Brady. Now, Angela Brady was the former RIBA president, so she's definitely someone who knows what she's talking about when it comes to the profession. She's had incredible experience in this profession as well, so Angela's going to be an amazing resource. I know how supportive and proactive she is as well when it comes to kind of networking with universities and motivating students and getting the best out of students, preparing them for work as well is an incredible endeavor she sees to as well. So we have an amazing panel here today that will hopefully give me a better understanding, give you a better understanding. And also remember, they're also going to be here thinking out loud. You know, they don't have the answers to the COVID problems. You know, I don't have the answers to the COVID problems. But the fact that we're all gathered here today to open up the conversation, to ask what the hell is going on, what should we do, And I think your opinions, as people watching this right now, your opinions are going to be as important. And that's the whole aim behind this. We bring the professionals, we bring the specialists, but we also bring the students and the young professionals who want to contribute. So without further ado, I think 6 minutes is enough. I planned 10 minutes, but we can go a bit, we can start a bit earlier. I wanted to bring on my first guest, Rion. So if Rion's here, just send me a little comment, Rion. But let me just remind everyone quickly, there is going to be a 1 hour time limit because Instagram has a 1 hour cap. So I will abruptly warn you when that's about to happen. And what we'll do then is we'll take our 5 minute break when it cuts off. So that will probably be after Arthur Mamou-mani. It might be towards the end of his thing, but either way we can adapt. The way we did last time, everyone kind of seamlessly came back on. But what we will do is take a 5 minute break after the 1 hour point, and I will tell you when that is. So that does mean the schedule might shuffle around a bit. But yeah, without further ado, Rion's here. Let's get Rion on. If I remember how to do this. Okay, so just searching for Rion. Join in a second. Mr. Rion Willard.
How are you doing, sir? Good to see you.
Good, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. I'm very well. How are you?
Can someone send a comment? Okay, so we'll try to get Rion back in. I think there were some connection problems. See if it works now. I mean, we've got the video and we've got the audio, so it shouldn't be a problem.
How are you doing? Is that? Yeah. Can you hear me? How's that? Is that working?
Okay, so one last time, and if it, oh, he's back. I can see you now.
Is that work? Can you hear me? This is Zoom. This is Zoom Live. Hey.
Like connection problems. I think, Rion, if this does.
Is it working? Can you hear me? Yeah.
Oh, sorry about
I'm
that,
good.
guys. I think it's sorted itself out.
Interesting. This is the
Cool. So you
this
can
is the
hear me,
world. This
yeah?
is I can hear you fine. Yeah. This is one of the frictions of virtual life.
Yeah, I think it was my problem. It seemed to be. I think I've now switched to data, so I think we're good.
Yeah. Sometimes when when you get the two people streaming at the same time, that's when it all
Yeah, man.
starts starts to
So
happen.
let's get your introduction, Ryan. If you could quickly introduce yourself, and then we'll get into some really interesting questions.
So my name's Rion Willard. I'm an architect. I've been an architect for the last 10 years or so. I've worked at places like Grimshaw, Peter Barber's, Rogers, RSHP, and for the last 6 years or so, I've been running my own architecture practice called TTHS Architects. Though I don't tend to do that much architecture these days. Most of my professional life is speaking with other architects about how they run their businesses, how they've grown companies. I speak to a lot of other people outside of the industry, thought leaders, property developers, entrepreneurs, business consultants, and I've become a consultant in my own right, where I deal and work with a lot of architects to help grow their businesses. And as you said earlier, co-founded the Business of Architecture UK with Enoch, who's my partner in the US, where we have spent, I've probably interviewed over 150 different architects around the world to do with their businesses. So
your brain is a very valuable
pleasure
asset.
to be here. And,
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
So again, like I said in the introduction, guys, like the amount of business kind of insight Ryan will have is, I would say, next to no one else I know. So what I'll quickly do, Ryan, is I'll ask you the first question, and the first question very simply is, how have you personally, how's your day-to-day life as a practitioner been affected by COVID, by this pandemic? Because obviously, I know you manage an architecture practice as well, but how's your day-to-day life been affected in the workplace?
Well, and then there's to answer this in two ways. Firstly, one as an architect, and secondly as a architectural broadcaster or communicator. So as an architect, and as I said, my architecture practice, I do less and less architecture now just because of, I do more and more as a consultant. But the projects that I have had have, one of them, well, on site, it stopped basically. But strangely enough, just before COVID in early March, I won a whole load of new projects with clients that I've been working with for a while. There was complications with that, trying to get on site to do surveys, trying to meet with people became impossible. So there's been a bit of a pause. Other projects and residential projects that I have going on have continued, and everything's been moved on to Zoom. I'm quite lucky. I run a very lightweight practice. Same with Business of Architecture as well. It's all run virtually anyway. So Enoch and I have been running a business he's in Visalia in California. I'm in London, and we've been doing that for a number of years. Anyway, so I'm well equipped to be online and to be in a virtual space. And again, the way that I've kind of set up my practice and my career has meant that everything's quite lightweight, and I'm very flexible and able to pivot and do different things. So with Business of Architecture, for example, obviously I've been putting out more content than usual because there's been more people wanting to hear stuff. And
Right.
I've probably done about 8 webinars. We've had probably 500 odd people attend, a selection of webinars over the last couple of months. I've been using the podcast platform to reach out with people in other countries. So, I've been speaking with people in the US, in South Africa, there's been people been in India. So in a way, the pandemic has been a nudge, if you like. It's been a nudge in a direction that I was already going into. And in many ways, because there's been an audience and people have been asking questions about what's happening in the industry, the podcast has been sort of digested more. And then that's also led to more me working with more architects as well.
Right.
So it's
quite interestingly, you, because of the niche of your work in podcasting, in some ways COVID has kind of positively affected you in terms of business and your output.
Yes, yeah. In a way, I think we were kind of in a position where I think like many businesses that have been set up with a strong online component have been able to pivot more of their energy into that direction, and do it a lot more smoothly. So I've been able to continue pretty much all of my operations, and same with the architecture practice as well. There's been a few things that have stopped on site, but the rest of the project teams and everyone, we've been able to continue work around that. Now, I'm speaking to architects all around the world, and that has not been the case for everybody.
Right. Right. So that's what I was going to ask. So you obviously are connected to many professionals who are working in the more traditional sense as architects. How have they been affected, and what's your kind of analysis been?
Yeah, well, it's a real wide spectrum, basically, of a lot of businesses. Yeah, interestingly, I was speaking to do you know Bob Borson, who's the founder of Life of an Architect?
I've heard of the platform, yeah.
It's a really fantastic blog. Now, he works in a large practice called Boca Power in Dallas, and he was saying how that they've kind of gone unharmed, if you like, throughout the pandemic, because places like that, they had various emergency procedures in place, for tornadoes. So if a tornado was going to rip its way through Dallas, the buildings would get evacuated, and they had plans in place for everyone to be working at home. So they initiated that, which allowed them to be operating virtually, and working, and them to work quite well. But I would say every practice that I've spoken to has had an impact on their income. Every single practice. A lot of the larger practices,
Negatively, of course.
Yeah. Well, not all, but there are going to be some that will have benefited. But I know a lot of larger corporate practices, some of their maybe more complex infrastructure clients and projects. It's not unusual for the clients to be turning around and requesting a drop in fees, by 15%, maybe as much as that. That's going to cause problems. Obviously, the majority of practices I've spoken to have had to furlough staff, so put staff onto 80% of their pay. The staff are now no longer allowed to do any work, but some of the larger practices have been continuing training with their staff. So essentially what's happening is they've got a workforce which is not working, but are getting more and more highly trained, and they're kind of ready for new projects. So either projects need to start back up again, or they need to win more work. You'll see in the construction industry that there will be a lot of clients now that are becoming more risk averse. So funding and investments may be slowing down, liquidity might be slowing down in the property market, which will have an impact on architects and projects happening. But again, we've seen in the last few weeks, things on site are starting to open up again, which is kind of making a little bit more movement. But there's also been a lot of friction in terms of studios making the move to working virtually. So a lot of studio, the kind of traditional architectural practice culture is you're in a studio all together, and you're working all together, and you work from 9 till 7 o'clock or whatever it is, right? And taking that online or virtually, probably between March and April, most practices were doing that. It was the first time they were doing that. There would have been all the sort of technical difficulties involved in setting it up, or the friction that's involved, and also there's going to be a real mix, right? You're going to experience people who are going to have a drop in productivity because they're now looking after children and they're looking after families. People are not set up properly to be working from home, so they're working in bedrooms. They're uncomfortable. It's difficult. There's maybe they don't have the best internet connection. You've got to find, as a leader of a business, you've got to find a way of how you can still be in communication with your staff and your team. So comms is absolutely crucial here, to be able to be transparent, honest, open, lay out a plan for, like, if you want to keep your team, you want to keep your staff, you've got to demonstrate, how am I going to do this, right? We're going to furlough you. If you get furloughed, you're not necessarily guaranteed a job at the end of it. So that's going to give people various types of anxiety, stress. If you're a practice owner and you're running a practice and you've got your kids, you've got to look after your kids now, so you're going to have to work around that. All this can make the situation complicated, and also the kind of just the pressure of working in isolation and stuff is going to have a different impact on different personalities. Now, on the other side of that, there will be practices that will kind of already maybe experimenting with remote working or using it, and this may be working well for some people, right? So the tech industry, for example, has been working remotely for the last 15 years, essentially. Like, lots of software companies are set up in a very lightweight way. The whole startup culture in the tech industry is often a lot more, it's a proper established culture, as opposed to in architecture where it's not so much.
Yes. Well, that's what they're saying with Facebook. Their employees at Facebook and Google and things, they might indefinitely just stay at home. And it's interesting to see that, maybe the same thing might be done in architecture, where what everyone talks about as the new normal may be that our future, 5-day week may be 3 days a week we're working from home, just generally speaking. Because I think as everyone and firms, and again, your perspective is interesting on this, as you've spoken to a lot of practices, is as they realize the kind of financial pitfalls of having people come in, and I remember when I was working in the practice, my director kept telling me that time is money, especially in the sense that we don't want you to be overkilling certain drawings and certain work, because you doing even 10% more work than proportionately we would be getting paid for is going to damage the business. So I think a lot of people are realizing actually there might be more efficient ways of running our practice, and it may involve we allow people to stay at home for 2 days a week. One of the interesting articles I was reading was Ken Shuttleworth from Make Architects. He was kind of speculating on how things would change, and what his office may be doing as well is they're talking about staggering work days. So perhaps bringing people in crews on particular given days to decrease the density of kind of travel and commute. I'm curious to think, have you come across or have you seen any other kind of adaptations that are already taking place?
Yeah, I mean, there's companies that are discussing about who comes in first, right? And establishing internally a kind of priority list of who needs to come into the office, who would, right. and also being in communication with your team, because some people really are not enjoying working at home, so they want to come in, and some people really are enjoying. So you need to establish that, and then be able to devise a plan where you have a reduced workforce working in the office, and then obviously you're going to have to set up your office in a way that's kind of respecting social distancing measures and all that kind of stuff. So people are getting into communications, and I've been talking a lot about in the business of architecture kind of scenario planning, and for businesses to be looking, McKinsey and Co, a kind of business consulting company, they have done a report which speculates, I think it's about 9 different ways the recession could play out. So you've got a quick rebound, like a V. So we've kind of had a very short, sharp contraction, and then it rebounds quickly. You've got a U shape, so it kind of goes back a little bit quicker. Then you've got the kind of short, sharp drop, and then a stepped recovery. So there might be a second wave, and then there's a kind of stepped recovery, which happens a bit quicker. So the one with the stepped recovery over a longer period of time is the one that a lot of the rest of the business world, a lot of executives, did a survey, are preparing themselves for. So when you're thinking about your re-emergence plan or your plan for opening up your office, this is something to consider. It's like, okay, there could be these 4 different ways the economy recovers. How, and then there's going to be a lot of consultation and communication that's needed with your team about how we're going to rephase going back into the office. A lot of practices, and also we're at the very beginnings of a recession right now. So technically, a recession is considered when there's 2 consecutive quarters of the financial year that are in contraction. So the last 2 weeks of March, and then this quarter, Q2, has been in contraction. So technically that's a recession, though it's only a short period of the last quarter. This quarter and next quarter, if that's both in contraction, then we have a recession. So there's going to be a bit of a lag time as well of the financial impact that's going to happen on businesses as well. So we will.
Right.
So everything's kind of speculation at the moment.
Exactly. I think that's another key point I wanted to say is that the first thing you said actually was so, I want to reiterate that is everyone is different. Every practice is kind of responding differently. There seem to be some patterns and some trends, but we're all trying to figure this out. I think the beauty of what's going to happen today is we're going to have so many different people, and especially you'll see at the end of this stream, we're going to get some other professionals working, for example, on Hawkins Brown and Arup, who are going to come in and talk to us as well. And how we're just going to get an idea of how everyone is kind of responding to this and how what everyone is seeing or experiencing. With Rion, I want to quickly jump into some of the questions that we got from people who sent us some questions in. So I think one thing to remember is the majority of the people watching this will probably be students and young professionals. Some of them might have jobs already secured. Some of them, like myself, are in limbo, waiting for an employer who might have already said yes, but are now kind of having to kind of wait things out for something more concrete. And then there's going to be a lot of people who are just, they finished their degrees, they've graduated, and they're looking to start a new job, but they don't even know where to start. Do I send a video application in, or do I send a physical package in?
I'll say something about graduating into a recession, because 10, 12 years ago, I graduated into a recession. Right? It may not be as severe as this one. I mean, the projections are speculating that this could be a very severe. Again, it's speculation, right? We don't know. Everyone's saying this is going to be a pretty bad recession. When I graduated, 2008 or so, the year before, 2007, it was so easy to get a job. Literally, just walked into when I was working as a student, I'd walk into a recruitment agency, and literally within a few hours I had a thing to choose from, and I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. 2008 came, and I actually finished my master's or diploma as it was then, and it was months and months of summer, like running out of money that I didn't have, wondering what was going to happen, and eventually got a job at Grimshaw, but then spent the next 3 years or so contracting. So I never had any security. It was kind of like you're always on these contracts that could be terminated within a period of a few weeks. Now, I was lucky to get a job. Right, there was friends of mine who spent maybe 8 months trying to find work. Other people were able to get into work, and they got permanent contracts. Not like they weren't around. But I must say, looking back at it now, that whilst I was frustrated at not having the security of a job, and I was contracting all the time, it started to make me think differently about what I wanted for my career. And I was frustrated that I'd spent the best part of 10 years becoming an architect, and now I've got a relatively a job that's kind of I've got friends who dicked around at university and now are earning more than directors of architecture practices. They've spent the last eight years in work doing stuff, and and that was kind of really frustrating. And then the you know, not the kind of the work that you end up doing in a recession, and clients pushing architecture practices to drop their fees, which happened, and then that means that you end up working later and working weekends, and it's just like, fucking hell, this is and so it was frustrating at the time, right? But when I look back at it now, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now if that hadn't happened.
Right. So am I correct in saying that it kind of put you off into a trajectory where you were starting to think more multidisciplinary, perhaps more outside of the box? Is there something I can do for myself and maybe think a bit more entrepreneurially?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when I graduated university, I wanted to work in a small, cool, trendy little practice, doing things with Arduinos and making stuff, and you know, for whatever reasons, I couldn't get. I had loads of interviews at those kinds of places, but wasn't landing the kinds of the jobs that I wanted. And that was a kind of cycle throughout my early parts of being an architect. Was kind of like, I wanted to get back into those smaller places, but you know, there was at least some security working in large practices, and I was working at some great practices. Don't get me wrong, but the whole context of that did get me thinking about running my own business and how else can I have a career here. And you know, I loved university so much and all the things that I was exploring and was interested in there. How do I get back into doing that into my career? And the kind of practice context of architecture wasn't providing that. So the first step was to set up my own business, which again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend, because that's it's a whole world in itself of trials and tribulations. And
tune into the Business of Architecture podcast for that.
And you know, that was a whole journey in itself. And you know, through kind of getting my natural desire to be with people and to be speaking and to be communicating, like that I couldn't contain that, you know, innate calling, if you want.
And in terms of, I think what the bigger point here might be is that perhaps in a scenario like this, you could look at it as a positive, in the sense that it might be a time to really reflect on what you actually want as a practitioner, as a professional. It also might be a time to start to plan and work on things that might help you achieve certain things. And I know, you know, I'm definitely one who advocates multidisciplinary practice, especially the tools we're given at architecture school. But you know, you never know. You might be getting involved in some sort of journalistic opportunities right now, or you might be looking to do some sort of product design, things that you might be finally have the chance to explore.
I've interviewed so many architects on the Business of Architecture who the last recession was the turning point for their careers. Right. They either people who owned and operated large practices, who went through a recession, they had to lay off 20 people, the business contracted, and they said, you know what, this is not what I really want to be doing. And they changed direction and created something much more fulfilling out of life. So, I mean, recessions happen, right? Recessions will happen periodically every 10 to 20 years, and of varying severity. And we also live in, so that's something that we've got to plan for as business people, always. And we're living in a world with the internet and social media where it is literally free to market and distribute content to thousands and thousands and thousands of people. So that, in my mind, creates a totally new, wonderful context for opportunity. And you know, I do advocate kind of straying off the traditional path of an architect. Like architects, we're super multi-talented and skilled, and that ability to have an overarching view of complexity in design systems, you can walk into all sorts of different jobs. If you've got skills coding, for example, my goodness, like, you know, you go look at how much a UX designer earns compared to an architect. Right? It's again, you know, it's not in every case, but there's lots of different opportunities. There are jobs now that exist that didn't exist 10 years ago. So as architects, you know, and there's lots of different ways to influence the built environment.
Yeah, I want to quickly get on to one or two questions. If you can give a quick fire on them, that'd be great. So quick fire on this. EJT Design asks, will practices still be offering placements and internships right now? What's your view on that?
Depends on the practice. It really depends. It depends on the practice. I mean, my advice for students has been to be, throughout your university career, is to be getting in contact with practice and professionals. So like what you're doing, I think that's a great idea, a podcasting, and you're interviewing people directly or establishing a network. But you can do it through LinkedIn, and you can ask practitioners for advice. Practitioners, if you are architect, one wonderful thing about architecture is that the older generation, in general, I think, are very, very helpful and very caring and nurturing towards young architects. Always. I mean,
That's definitely true.
If a student asks me or messages me, if they want to chat about something, I'm always do it. I always jump on the phone, give 20 minutes, and have a conversation about someone's career. So reaching out to practitioners, to architects whose work you like, and just saying, really love what you're doing, and I'm looking for some advice about my career.
Yep.
You do that, and you start maintaining relationships, then you can start asking for internships, part 2 placements. I think, in a recession, it's going to be difficult. There is additional difficulties because a lot of very skilled architects are going to be made redundant. So you're going to have, basically, as a part 2 or a part 1, you are now going to be in competition with an influx of very experienced architects who have recently been made redundant and who may be in a very urgent situation to find work. So may be willing to accept lower salaries than is normal. So that makes it complicated. But again, there will be practices that are offering internships and available and things like that available for students.
Just have to ask.
You just got to be networking. You got
to
be
ask. Yeah.
And I don't advise the kind of cold sending out mass portfolios by email all the time. Just if you can jump on the phone and have a conversation with someone, A, it improves your communication skills, and B, it can be a lot more direct, and it's harder to say no on the phone or in person. Right?
And also I think to echo what you're saying, if people, I think you're 100% right, people need to contact the firms they're interested in. Send them an honest email saying, look, I'm worried about certain things. Here's my current situation. I'm happy to do some sort of internship. What do you offer? And I think,
I'd actually advise, to when this is kind of, the same advice I would give to a firm about marketing is you want to be able to demonstrate how your specific skill sets is in alignment with that business's and with the business case of that practice, right? What are they actually doing? So don't make it all about you, make it about the practice. Always.
Good point.
It's not about, unfortunately, it's not about us. It's about the people that you want to be serving. So as an
For sure.
employee, you're coming at it like that. Same with if you're a practice owner. It's about how to serve the client and what they're dealing with.
100%. Now, if you can answer this one quickly, because I think I can answer it quite quickly as well. And the answer would be tune into the Business of Architecture podcast. So I don't know if your answer is going to be different, but the question is, how can students develop entrepreneurial skills to start their side hustle? Because we've kind of been talking about maybe a side hustle type thing that could generate passive income or become a full-time endeavor. And that's by Mayor.Mystery. So if you can answer that quickly.
I know Mayor. Mayor's got a YouTube channel and a podcast which you should check out as well. Actually, he's an architect engineer. He's got some interesting stuff. I mean, in terms of developing entrepreneurial skills and being entrepreneurial, the best way to do it is to start a little side hustle, start a YouTube account, start an Instagram thing, start cultivating an audience, right? The way that, if we're talking social media and making money out of that, or turning that into a side hustle, just the art of building an audience, and then each little piece of content that you create is like a micro exercise in business and copywriting and marketing.
Yeah.
So the best way really is just to start and to educate yourself. Listen to the Business of Architecture, listen to Gary Vaynerchuk, listen to there's so much good quality business podcasts and people speaking about running their own practices and running businesses and the startup culture like never before has there been this wild amount of information. So I would say, as architects, fall in love with business, right? And start experimenting. Have a little side hustle. If you've got an idea, test it, see if it works.
Amazing.
And if there's something that you're truly passionate about and that you want to be speaking about, start your YouTube channel. Let me know about it. I'll talk to you about it. I'll help.
Amazing. Rion, what can I say? It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I think people can be a bit, can hopefully look forward to mine and your podcast coming out soon, and if you guys have found that useful, just imagine what the actual podcast is going to be like, and then imagine what his podcast is going to be like. So if you guys are looking for that business advice, jump onto the Business of Architecture podcast for amazing business advice. And thank you, Rion. And hopefully you can stick around for the rest of the event.
Yeah, cool.
Awesome, man. Thanks.
Cheers. Take care.
Take care. So amazing insight there by Rion. We're going to quickly go to our next guest, Arthur Mamou-mani. I'm really excited for this one. So Arthur, if you're there, I'm going to get you on. You're welcome, Aisha. And hello, Noel. Nice to have you.
Oh,
Arthur.
Oh, wow. That was immediate.
Yeah. We've got some good technology here.
Yes, brilliant. Cool. Thank you.
Can I just say a big thank you, as always, for supporting and for being part of this. And again, to people, I've done a podcast with Arthur that's going to come out soon. If there's anyone who's just super humble and always has time to give back to students, it's Arthur. And again, so thank you for being here. Please, if you could just give a quick introduction so people can get an idea of what you do.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I always love speaking with you. It's nice to connect with students and people that are starting their journey. I'm an architect. I'm 37 years old. We are here in the studio Mamou-mani, and I also have a fabrication space called the Fab Hub. Here we go. For some reason, I happen to have my business card just next to me. And I'm a teacher at University of Westminster, Diploma Studio 10.
Awesome. And again, if people probably, a lot of people already know, I think we've got quite a lot of people watching right now as well. Arthur's been getting a lot of publicity on Dezeen recently as well for a lot of exciting new projects. So definitely have a Google of all of our guests, because the amount of content they provide externally is amazing. So Arthur, I want to kind of kick off same way I did with Rion and say, how have you personally, as a practitioner and as an individual, how have you been dealing with the pandemic? Because obviously you're in Mamou-mani right now. You're trying to kind of adapt your business to this as well. What's your experience been so far?
So we're just back in the studio, some of us. And yeah, I think what's been really kind of hard is getting used to a new routine. I found, like, for example, going back to the studio really stressful and exhausting because I got used to the COVID kind of routine, which was at home and was actually quite fairly relaxing, because you're at home and you don't necessarily have the group dynamics that can make it a little tricky, right? You get distracted, you get here, you get there. When you're at home, you're extremely focused. And I mean, I was lucky, because I don't have necessarily kids and stuff. I know it's not always easy for people that don't have the right setup. But in my case, it was a good time to do things that I don't do when I'm in the studio, read, take my time, focus on tasks, And we all shifted to things like Slack. I don't know if you know, like platforms that allow multiple people to collaborate together. And so we had no choice but to kind of force ourselves to be more systematic in our collaborations. And so that was good. Oops, I think that, sorry. Here we go. We're going to take care of the background sounds. Yeah.
Right. So in terms of the actual, like your business, and I know I don't want to make this all about money, but how has your business actually been affected in terms of the projects that are going on? You know, I understand I understand most of your projects, they aren't necessarily kind of, well, what are the nature of your current clientele?
I mean, we do really weird things. A lot of people think it's not even architecture, and I think that's why we exist, really, because we provide a new kind of ways of doing architecture using digital fabrication. So we 3D print giant projects. We use virtual reality now, which was our big transition with the COVID. We provide services that other architects can't provide, and that's why we are doing what we do. And so I don't know. I mean, behind me you can see, for example, our last project before the COVID hit, which was the project we did in Saudi Arabia, which was with Chris Fresh, a really wonderful architect from Austria. And we went there to build with sand, and we 3D printed with sand some urban furniture, which was really brilliant because it showed what can be done with technology and sort of sustainability. Like it was good. It was a good test to see if we can rethink sustainability there. And so that was great. And then COVID happened.
So have you had a negative impact on the actual kind of finances and things like that, or has it been quite? Because what I'm trying to understand is, as a practice that I'm sure many students would be excited to apply to, and I'm sure there's a whole niche of students who have the skills to be able to work at a practice like yours. We want to kind of get understanding of what the employment landscape looks like right now.
Yeah, I mean, we're lucky because our clients are often involved with technology, and so therefore they are not necessarily in trouble, because I think that what the industries that are really affected are, let's say, places where you go physically, but not necessarily clients that deal with the sort of digital world or so per se. And because we deal a lot with digital tools, our clients are often towards that world. And we also try and, I mean, yes, we had project postponed, we had project canceled, but we had new project coming in because I think we shifted really fast to what I think will be the future, which is, you know, virtual reality. So very quickly, this has started a new market. I think markets are dynamic things. They don't necessarily close, like, you know, we call it the pie mentality, to think that the world or the economy is like a closed pie, that the slices, you know, you take it away and then there's no more cake. When actually the economy is a really dynamic thing. You create markets, you open up possibilities, you go and get new possibilities, you create these opportunities, you innovate, you make a bigger cake. So that's how people should think. This is an opportunity for people to rethink the world and to actually create a better world.
Definitely. I mean, there's a lot of interesting parallels there between what you were saying and what Rion was saying. I want to ask you about the virtual reality. What are you doing with virtual reality with clients right now?
So we're putting all our projects inside, you know, the Oculus Quest interface through a platform called Alspace, which is what's called a metaverse. So in the future, hopefully, I don't know, I think it seems to be happening this way. The internet won't just be a screen where you browse websites and buy on Amazon and so on. It will be a whole metaverse of elements, physical elements that you interact with an avatar, and you walk around an actual second world that is called the metaverse and that you interact with physically. And for architects, that opens up a sort of digital world that we need to design, which I think is more for game designer at the moment. But when we posted, you mentioned Dizine, like when we posted on Dizine that we were looking for game designers because we had no clue, we had like so many people reaching out. It was almost like the industry was looking for an opportunity to work with architects. And that's really exciting, you know, when you admit that you want to explore a new world, but you don't know how to do it, like I was amazed that Dizine posted that, and it was really amazing. And then we kind of got really serious with Unity and with Allspace and Oculus, and now we're doing a live tour on Monday, so it's going to be quite something.
Amazing. So it seems as if you're already playing a part in how these things are going to adapt, and I think it's an interesting thing to consider, the fact that right now the main problem we're having as people who want to get into the architectural workforce, and the architectural workforce themselves, the directors and whatnot, is how they liaise with their clients and how they communicate effectively with their clients and show them drawings and ideas when they can't be together. So having a virtual reality kind of metaverse, that's an incredible kind of innovation, it seems.
Yeah, it's crazy how I had a site visit with a client in this world, the parallel world, and then he said something. He said something really strange. But I thought it was really beautiful what he said. He said that this is the first time he realizes the scale of the project, because you're wearing your goggles and you're at human height, right? And so the project is relative to your body. Whereas when you do it on Rhino or on your screen or with renders, you never associate your height, your body, with the image. So I think that's where it becomes really interesting. Like right now we're having this conversation and people might want to kind of stop the conversation and intervene in the live and so on. When you're in virtual reality, distance is one of the parameters. So if you go far away from someone, you hear them less, you can go towards someone else, you can go in a room. So imagine if Zoom was in virtual reality, then you could kind of use architecture as a way to communicate like we do in the real world. We go to a room to have an intimate conversation. We go in a meeting room. And so all these could be happening within that metaverse, which I find really exciting.
Wow. So while we're over here trying to figure out how we can type from home, Arthur's in a literally another dimension doing different work. I think we kind of want to also bear in mind that our current viewership is probably right now a lot of students looking to just get on the payroll, and they want to be in architecture, and it's very easy to say to people, and I've said it to people, and I think back on it to say, oh, be entrepreneurial, just go on and do and find your own way and find your passion and pursue it. But not everybody is cut in the same cloth, and not everybody is able to kind of do those things. Some people just want to progress in the field and climb the kind of ladder of traditional architecture. So as someone who has a lot of experience in the architectural field, what would you advise sort of the part 1 graduates and the part 2 graduates, myself, who are kind of in this job uncertainty right now, but they don't necessarily feel like starting a business?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few questions in one. I graduated like the previous speaker during the crisis in 2008. So I graduated in August. In September, the Lehman Brothers bank collapsed and no job. Of course, as a kind of recent graduate, I wanted to work for the superstars, and I actually got interviews with Richard Rogers and so on, like the practice, but didn't get the job because the economy crashed. And then I remember someone wanted to help and said, oh, I know this practice there. They're not famous, but they're really nice and they just want a really cool project and they need help. And so I was like, okay, let's see what happens. And I couldn't find anything. So I went there with an open mind, and they indeed just want a really cool project. And because I was trained with skills that I think at the time was fairly rare, generative component, parametric design, I got to join a practice with a special role. Whereas if I would have joined a bigger practice of my own choice, in a way, if I may say, I think I would have been one of the many, at Zaha Hadid that would be doing that kind of stuff. And I wouldn't feel special, or I wouldn't have potential to grow as much as I did in this sort of relatively smaller practice that actually had a project that was catered towards what I love. So I think it's not about creating businesses, or we're all entrepreneurs. I mean, you are, everyone, employees are entrepreneurs.